Hey guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. Today we are going to be doing our video review of this bed we made. Now, Jack, this is a game that you very much pitched to me. Before we kick off, I really just want to ask you, how did you discover this game?
It was on Facebook. Google marketing was up to its old tricks again. It just popped up on my Facebook, and the first thing I noticed was that it was Life is Strange inspired. So straight away, which, it's a big title, of course, Life is Strange, and we operate in choice-based games. So I was like, oh, okay, let's take a look at this. And then obviously, in terms of like the premise of the actual game, you're playing as a cleaner in a hotel in the 1950s, and you're snooping around guests' rooms essentially, and then there's a mystery for you to solve. So it was ticking a lot of boxes, and it did say that there's like choice elements to it as well. So I was like, okay, like it's a nice little indie game. I think I'll give this a try, like while we're waiting for our other big titles to come out.
Yeah, it literally is like someone like made Life is Strange but tailored it to you, Jack. So like, yeah, I was always like, it's in the realm of the channel. We were happy to cover it. So before we kick off as well, guys, be sure to check out our Twitch in the description below. Jack has his gameplay. I've re-uploaded it to YouTube. If you've seen our Thursday videos, we've been uploading them around then. So yeah, be sure to check out our live gameplay, guys. In this video, the game has a big mystery. We want to keep it spoiler free because it's still quite a fresh game, and we know people out there might not have played it yet. Maybe you're waiting for the game to go down on a sale, so we want to respect that. So what we'll do is that this video is going to be spoiler free up until a certain point. So don't worry, guys, I will indicate, or Jack will, right before we get into a spoiler section. I'll also timestamp it below. So if you want to play the game, you'll feel free to watch this video, but please skip the spoiler section. So without further ado, Jack, I'm just going to have a really general question here. Did you enjoy the game?
On the whole, yes. And I mean, I think this actually neatly comes into what my expectations were going into it. Because I remember last year I bought a game under as a similar pretense, and that's Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and it was a big letdown. So I was sort of going into this one like, oh god, could it be the same? But honestly, like when you boot up the menu, it literally says in the top right corner that it's an indie game. So straight off the bat, I was like, right, okay, don't expect a AAA experience like we do with Supermassive and X, Y, and Z. Just going into it with an open mind and see what it delivers, and hopefully you'll have some fun along the way. But I actually did a little bit of background on this, and apparently this game's been like in development for like 4.5 years. And obviously it was done by a gaming company called Low Birth. And honestly, it was quite actually interesting listen, because they were basically saying like, the reason we're called Low Birth is we want people to have low expectations going into our games with the potential of it being better than what they thought. And that's honestly like married up to what, my actual experience was now that I've done multiple playthroughs. So as I said before, yeah, you're playing as a cleaner in a hotel in the 1950s. And it seems that this game, it's like the whole world that you're in, it's like rife with like homophobia, and the whole subject is like really taboo. You're wandering around the hotel and you've got like these little pamphlets that talk about homophobia and like deviance and things that characters say, and like say no to divorce and all this sort of stuff. But the basic premise is that you get sucked into this mystery, and you've then got to go around these rooms and like try and solve it essentially without like trying to go into any more details. And there's like nice little like gameplay elements along the way, which, as a quick side note, I do think it would work better on Steam. Not to say that it was bad on Xbox, but I think this is perhaps tailored better on Steam, because with the QTEs, there's like certain motions that when you're like cleaning in an environment, and you're like cleaning a mirror, for example, and you can like do the QTE for it, and from gameplay I've seen on Steam, it looks more smoother than it was on Xbox. And I think the whole like point and click nature of like, just using the cursor to like open up a drawer or something, again, you'd probably find it a little bit more accurate. Whereas for me on Xbox, the movement is almost like a little bit more restricted on the analog. So it took me like both analog sticks to sort of like try and line up where I actually wanted to go. on that as well, like this really doesn't hold your hand, this game. It will, like, you know, sort of like talk about supermassive games, there's always like a white dot to suggest there's a clue. You don't get this on this game. Like, you have to go full detective mode. Like, you're gonna have to like scan the environment thoroughly, opening drawers, looking around the backs of papers and opening safes and stuff like that. So, you know, depending on what ending you get, it can actually feel a lot more rewarding. I think moving over to, so like, the choices now, again, like, I'll try not to go into like spoiler territory here, but I think the choices, in terms of how sophisticated they are, it's I don't know. See, the thing is, you'd have to say that it's like better than like The Wolf Among Us, because, you know, that is like a fairly linear with like some minor things. But like, maybe this is like slightly better in the sense that it really depends on who can get fired from your, you know, from your team, and then also who the culprit is in this mystery that you're trying to solve. And a lot of it leans into dialogue. Like, the key scenes are perhaps like when you're talking to the police, but also like when you're trying to find out who to get fired. Again, it depends on your exploration. It depends on what items you find, and more importantly, and this is where I think this game's good, it depends on what items you choose to omit. Because you're a cleaner, you can like throw stuff away. So actually your ending can be shaped on like the certain things that you leave in the world for the police to find at the end, which, you know, I think is a really cool feature, and that's why it enables like so many different endings. In terms of like the different puzzles, I thought they were good. I think when me and Liam were playing, the first, maybe like third, was a little bit sort of you're finding your feet, because I expected the mystery to be a bit of an anchor and then you go and solve it from there. Whereas this game, it's actually more like a little bit like Gone Home. You're just thrown into an environment and then you're looking at various things and you're piecing the mystery from there, with maybe a little bit of help, like exposition, like when you're talking to your acolyte, that being Beth or Andrew. In terms of the puzzles themselves, a nice variety. You can piece shredded bits of letter together. There's like little riddles and codes that you can solve. There's like making a key at one point, and then there's like a fuse box puzzle as well, which was quite good. So there's nice variety there for people that really like puzzles. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the characters. Now, for me, personally, this is where it slightly falls down. And I think, you know, like I said at the top of this, we know it's an indie game, so your expectations have got to be tempered a little bit. However, there are actually a lot of characters in this game. Probably you're looking at around about the 20 number. In terms of characters that you actually see, it's only a handful. So like when we were playing, mate, all those characters that were, you know, mentioned about, you know, even people that you work with, you never actually see them. You only ever hear their voice. But I'll talk about that more when we go into like the spoiler section. And I think that that's a little bit lacking, because when you do get these achievements about who gets fired and who the culprit is and all that sort of thing, you've not got that attachment to them because you've not directly communicated to them. They're just something that you can read in Sophie's journal, or like maybe a little bit of dialogue that you've heard from, you know, some other character, or even like a little pamphlet that you've read in someone's locker, you know. So like, in terms of the depth, like, they tried to do it, but it didn't quite land for me. And even the characters that you see, it's quite difficult to get invested in. Like, I know that they tried it with Sophie, with like the mental illness thing for her mum. Andrew, I think he said about the same thing. That's like how they can bond together. But I found like maybe it was because the facial animations weren't that strong, but ultimately like it didn't land for me in terms of like being really invested in the characters. I was invested in the mystery, but not the characters. There is the odd glitch in this game, but I have seen that apparently like the developers are like right on the boil. Like, so that this might be out of date by the time that this goes out. But in terms of glitches, there is moments where like the game will pause. It will just like freeze frame and you can't move your character around. It doesn't typically last long. It may be like a few seconds, but yeah, there's that. And then there's that very one specific instance where you go down the lift and you expect the doors open, but they don't. The doors just stay shut, and you've got to like walk through the doors to get into the reception. But nonetheless, in terms of exploration, there's quite a few environments. You've got the reception, the 5th floor. There's like collectibles you can find in like the staff room and the basement. There are a few doors that you can't go in. Unfortunately, it does seem that they are just off limits. But on the whole, like, it's not too bad a world to explore. And I'd say that the 2 remaining issues that I had with it, one's quite minor, which was like the brightness. There is moments where I dialed the brightness like right up to the top, and yet it was still pitch black on screen. And there are moments where there are things hidden in like the pitch black corners of a room. So you're just like, and then you couple that with like the cursor, like trying to hover over something in the pitch black. It's like a little bit clunky and a little bit awkward. So, but perhaps not the best experience. And the other thing was pacing. Like, I was invested in the mystery, but I think sometimes when you play these games, you want there to be like a bit of a roller coaster, you know? You want it to be really tense and then for it to come down again, and then so on and so forth. But with this, it sort of didn't. It stayed very much one note until a certain point, and then it didn't do much after that for me. Like, you know, sure, it ramped up a little bit, but you knew that you was coming to the end of the game at that point. So over the 6-hour runtime, you'd know that for like 5 hours of it, it's going to be pretty one note. It's going to be you just looking around the room at various bits and pieces. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say there, mate. So I'm happy to roll into the spoiler section. So anyone that's basically watching now, hope that was good enough for you. There's a lot of information to spill, but we're now going to go into like the spoilers of this bed we made.
Yeah, because like obviously I'm taking a very much back seat with the video. I was present, but Jack has gone in, he's looked at the branching, he's done the trophy hunting. One thing that I want to comment on is that when we originally played it, we kind of did it in 2 halves plus a conclusion afterwards, like a little bonus. But I was very much more sold by the second half of the game. We played the first half, and like you say, there was that whole point of there being a mystery, but because you're finding clues, it did feel like information overload with a bunch of clues that you didn't know what they were for, and a bunch of characters that you didn't know who they were. Eventually it kind of ties and you do get there, but it is a bit of an uphill battle at the start, I feel. And the other quarrel I sort of had was you had this mystery, but then there was all this co-worker drama, and I didn't quite know like whether to invest in the mystery or the characters like you mentioned, and then I didn't know what the relevance of like, you know, the co-worker quarrels were. So I don't know if it's just for achievement and trophy purposes, so hopefully that is something you can clarify in this section here. But yeah, I mean, that was very much my take, but the game very much recovered itself in the second half, and I think that might be because the mystery started to like connect, and that's when I really got into it.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, for your sake, mate, I'll go through it now. So like, you know, the whole co-worker drama thing, there was a lot of stuff that we found. There was also some stuff that we didn't find, and that was because you had to go through like a lot of lockers basically to sort of like see what the ins and outs were of like all the various people. The disappointing thing, though, like I said in the spoiler-free bit, is that you don't see other characters. In terms of getting them fired, you have to do very specific things. So like, if you wanted to get Linda fired, who's basically the woman that was trying to split Wendy and Jacques up, you basically have to get rid of something that's in Wendy's locker. I think it's basically a letter Wendy puts saying that Linda's a bitch or something like that. And you've got to leave the lipstick writing and the note up on Bernard's door. And what happens then is if you do that and you go and you play the game a little bit more, you get to a point where you come out of room 509 and you can hear Bernard and Linda talking, and you've just basically got to eavesdrop their conversation. You don't see what's going on. There's no bonus, you know, sort of like visuals. You just hear it. And then you hear him say, oh, you're just, you know, jealous of Wendy, you're fired. And then that's it. And then the achievement pops. And that's basically how it works for each of the colleagues. It's the same with Eugene. Like, if you go into the office and you don't clean up Eugene's mess and you don't shut the window, you just take the screwdriver, you'll then hear him get fired. later on as well, just by eavesdropping at the door. So in terms of branching, it's not sophisticated in the sense that, like, you know, there's more content for you to see per se. It's more about hearing it, like you're just eavesdropping at a door. That's how it works in terms of, like, you know, the staff and whatnot. In terms of, like, the actual endings, now, in our ending, mate, we stayed in the job as Sophie, didn't we? And the Paul, Marcella, and Anne Beaumont all got charged for the murder of Hector Cruz, didn't they?
Yeah.
So there is actually something that we completely missed. So if you use, like, the code from the fuse box for 509, you can go into the safe in 509 and you can find that there was someone staying in room 504, which is literally the first room you start off in the game. And basically it tells you that he's a disgruntled father because Hector Cruz was his insurer, I think life insurance, and his wife and family died in a house fire, his 3 kids. So that actually explains, you know, like the 3 bears on the bed, mate, that we were just dicking about with, like rotating and having a laugh with. Those actually had like a very like potent role in the plot because they are burnt slightly. So while the mystery never actually clearly says it's this guy that's in 504, it's heavily implied that it is. So it clearly, like, when we got Paul and Marcella and Anne put, you know, banged to rights in prison, we probably got a bad ending. So yeah, you've got that, but again, like, you don't see this person. Also as well, you know, like the mystery famous person, you don't see anything about them. Yeah, you don't see anything about them either. Like, it's literally just a story. Like, there's someone staying upstairs. Like, I couldn't find anything else, no other fancy ending, nothing. So that was a bit of a letdown. In terms of, like, and this is where I do think the game does come into its own, because, like I say, with the cleaning, and you can leave certain items out, and you can chuck certain items away, you do manipulate what the police find. But equally, you can go the other way, and because you can feel, because you can choose to feel sympathetic about the whole storyline of, like, the two lesbians, you know, having an affair and that, you can choose to just, like, deny everything to the police. You can hide everything. You can step in the blood and walk your footprints around, so that they basically arrest you for obstruction of justice, and then you can ultimately go to prison. Which there is a little cutscene for that. It's when you're speaking to your acolyte at the end. Like, you have a bit of dialogue, and then the police come in and pick you up. So that's one particular ending, and another one as well is, like, where if, like, I think it's tied in where if no one gets arrested for the crime, then Bernard doesn't have any reason to, like, call out he mentions, like, deviant behaviour. Basically, he says that if there's no deviants that have been found, he ultimately has to give the hotel back to his brother. So, like, when you go into his office at the end, you can get 2 different Bernards. One is quite chipper and he's like, oh yeah, you know, you've been a good maid or you've been a bad maid, depending on your cleaning. Or I can give you a promotion, X, Y, and Z. Or you can get quite a downbeat Bernard who's like, we've been getting really bad press. You know, I've put my life's work into this and it's completely blown up. And then ultimately his brother comes and takes over at the end. So I think I've covered all the endings there, mate. I don't know what your take on it is, because I've just been speaking at you for God knows how many minutes.
Nah, that's alright. Yeah, like, I mean, really interesting. I like the fact that there's varied endings, because that's what we cover, and it's nice that we have that. Bit disappointed, the thing you mentioned about, like, the whole celebrity, that, like, they've given us a bit of a red herring story where there's just a bit of false hope where you think that might connect somewhere, because, like any crime thing, I'm going to grab a bit of info and try and connect everything that's thrown at me, you know, in a game kind of thing. I mean, maybe that's just real life and it's what they were going for, but yeah, it's one of those ones where it feels okay. It's nice that we get all these, like, little varied things. One thing I wanted to ask you as well that I was hoping you could elaborate on is the difference between picking Beth and Andrew as an accomplice, and if that has any, like, relevance or variation there.
None. I'm afraid not. there's none. So basically, you know how we were saying about, oh, if you choose Beth, she tells you about like the whole wax thing, and you know, maybe with Andrew you do something else.
Yeah.
You don't. You do the exact same thing. A lot of the dialogue is similar as well. I think the only difference, I can't remember what like Beth's backstory is, but when you talk to Andrew, he can tell you about a backstory, how like he was a priest or something when he was younger, and he had some like mental health condition, and then that enables you to connect with him because as Sophie you can tell him that your mother had a mental condition as well. But yeah, in terms of the whole acolyte thing, no, it plays out basically exactly the same, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we went with Beth because I felt like there was almost like a hint of like a romance story between them, and I think it blended and married really well with Anna and Mrs. Cruz, because it kind of like, you know, you sort of can sympathize with them more because you can put yourself in their shoes as well. So I kind of like the way we did it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I did prefer it when I picked with Beth as well. It felt like Beth was just sort of like a bit of a stronger character than Andrew as well. I think honestly, like looking at it, and again, like applying the context of like it's an indie game, like this isn't a bad game. Like it's not absolutely amazing. It's not going to be something that we're like raving about like in years to come. But like for what the small team did in terms of like how they achieved, like with the, you know, the various endings, and you know, obviously there are like little minor dialogue things here and there as well. There's some collectibles that you can get, you know, and it was good enough to go back to play through and like trying to get the 100% and stuff. So yeah, like I think it is one of them where if you're a little bit, you know, maybe you're waiting for another choice-based game and you want to play detective for a little bit, yeah, like this bed we made, it's not a bad option. Not amazing, but it's not a bad option either.
So recently you've been going back and doing some trophy hunting, and you mentioned a little bit before we recorded that there's one that you're unable to get because of a potential glitch. I was hoping you could elaborate on that.
Oh yeah, so basically there's an ending, right, where if you get Linda fired and you're a very good maid, you know, you make the beds, you sort the pillows, you clean everything up, you can get an ending where Bernard comes up to you and says, yeah, I need a new governess. I've fired Linda, you've been a great maid. How about you become my next governess? And you can choose to accept that. And I did all of that, and for some reason the achievement hasn't popped. And it's literally the last one, which is so annoying, you know. Because I think I've been playing this game now for, it must be around sort of like the sort of 14-hour mark, pushing maybe. And then like you've got all the other ones, and for some reason that one's not popping. So I don't know if there's a minor thing I've somehow done wrong, but it's weird because it does play out, you know, as it should. At the end of the game you get these stills to indicate what happens to people like after the, you know, the events of the game. And you do see Sophie like stood there with a telephone like in the governess's office. So I've definitely done it right, but it's for some reason it's just not popping. So that is another little glitch that perhaps they need to iron out.
Oh, very well. But yeah, I mean, I guess with everything you've told me and my conclusion of the game, like I'm glad you've told me a lot of points I didn't know, because, you know, some dots have been connected and the game's probably slightly better than I thought. But I'm in the same camp as you. I think it's an okay game. It's not one that swept me off my feet. It's not one that I'm going to remember in years to come. I strongly doubt it anyway. But a nice little project, and it's a different, you know, games company that are on the map now, Low Birth, so we'll be able to kind of see what they kind of pitch next. I feel like, you know, we said sort of maybe you can't have 20 plus characters in a 5-hour game. Maybe it's just not that simple and that doesn't work. So I think maybe I would have preferred more kind of emphasis on the mystery side and less kind of with, you know, like the drama stuff with the colleagues, because it's difficult going in and out of lockers. And the other thing as well is that I know with like the typical games, like whether it's Quantic Dream, Supermassive, Don't Nod, it's usually like, do you want to do A or B, and then that affects the story. This one, it's almost quite difficult because it's like based off of how you clean and what you leave out, and whether you leave suitcases open and doors open potentially. So although that sounds a lot more difficult and challenging, I don't know whether I like that or not, because it almost sounds like really difficult to get the ending you want potentially. But then again, maybe there's people out there that are going to prefer that.
It's a very good point. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I straight up Googled it Like, there was no way I was going to just replay the game and be like, oh, let's just see if I can get that ending. Because, I mean, when you've played certain scenes, the good thing about this game of solving the puzzles is that once you know the answers to the puzzles, you can get through this game pretty quickly. Like, you'll probably find that if you like exploring, this game will probably take you around about the 5-hour mark. But you could probably get the game done in like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. You know, from start to finish, if you know like exactly where to go, all the right puzzles and things like that. So, but yeah, you are right. Like, in terms of the what evidence to leave out and stuff, I did Google it because I was like, I don't want to be wasting my time. Because if you get that one bit of evidence wrong, if you fail to get one sort of thing thrown away and the police pick it up, you're not going to get the ending you want. So it's probably worth just looking it up.
No, very well. I mean, yeah, to be honest, yeah, like Jack said, you know, that's our kind of review of like this bed we made. So, guys, in the comments, honestly, tell us what you thought of the game. Tell us if, you know, this is a game that you'll probably pick up if you haven't already. And yeah, tell us what you made of our comments. Well done to Jack as well, for taking the brunt of this, for putting it on his Twitch. Like I said, guys, please check that out in the description, because Jack will be like, you know, streaming more. So you can check that out. But anything to add, Jack?
I don't think so. I think that's it from me. Like I say, I hope you enjoyed the review, guys. And yeah, like Liam said, leave your comments in the comments section and I'll be replying to them very soon.
All right, take care, guys. See you soon.
Catch you later.